Hello and welcome back to the Edge of the Box end of season review. I'm your host, Champions League Dan Bardell, joined by George Elek and Jonathan Wilson. We're going to rattle through today our teams of the season, our player of the season, our young player of the season, and our signing of the season, and see how we all match up against each other. This show is sponsored, of course, by UltimateFan, as always. So thank you to them for continuing to sponsor us. And if you want to find out a little bit more about them, then have a look at the link, in the description. Chaps, how are we? Jonathan, I know you're a big fan of these kind of shows.
Absolutely love team of the season. I think it's one of the highlights of the year.
He was absolutely delighted to be asked to do this one instead of Sam. George, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I also kind of I think in awards need better definitions where I never really understand exactly what you're trying to pick when you're doing a team of the season or signing the season, as we'll get on to a bit later.
You're trying to pick the best team of the season, the best players, and then I guess you...
Yeah, but then the best by what measure, though? Because
the best team of the season is the Manchester City first 11.
Well, you don't know that yet, because they haven't won the league yet, Jonathan. I mean, they might have done by the time this video goes out. But, if Arsenal win the league, surely then it's the Arsenal 11 is the
well, okay, yeah, that's a not unreasonable point.
We're all playing a 4-3-3. I don't think we were tasked with that, but I've seen, in the old days when teams always used to be 4-4-2. I think now it's 4-3-3.
Well, it's the default formation, isn't it?
Yeah, everyone picks 4-3-3, except for WhoScored, who usually go for a 4-4-2 and everything.
But the top three teams in the league all play a 4-3-3, don't they? So
yeah, that makes sense.
Do Villa play a 4-3-3?
Not really. No. Well, 4-4-2 box.
There's one. Right. The issue with the 4-3-3 is there's one player that I'm assuming we've all chosen who is playing in a position that he hasn't played that much this season, or at least when he has played there, he hasn't been as good as when he's played somewhere else. But
okay, that's interesting. Well, I think I know who you're talking about, but we'll get into it now then. Jonathan, who have you gone for as your goalkeeper?
I've gone for Emi Martinez. You'll be happy to hear.
That's an excellent pick, Jonathan. Why have you chosen Emi Martinez?
Because he's a massive arse, and I think goalkeepers need to be massive.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, a little spoiler: I haven't picked Emi Martinez, despite me having a heavy Villa bias. And the reason I've done that, and this isn't necessarily his fault, because Villa just haven't kept loads of clean sheets. But I guess except for when he's throwing one in against Liverpool, which is a very, very rare thing for him to do. Is he the best goalkeeper in the Premier League, Jonathan? Would you say? Or has he been the best this season? Is that what
he's been? Best this season, I'd say. I think Alisson's had a pretty good season as well. Edison's had a lot of injuries, which maybe slightly detracted from him. I think
so did Alisson, to be fair, didn't he?
Yeah, I think Edison's shot-stopping stats are not that good for this season. Yeah, Martinez, I think it's also when Robin Olsen plays, you really notice. When Kevin Kelleher plays for Liverpool, you sort of forget about it after 2 or 3 minutes. Equally, when Ortega plays for City, he's a really good keeper. I mean, he was arguably man of the match. I think he did get the Sky man of the match, didn't he, on Tuesday, having come off the bench.
Yeah.
So maybe Martinez benefits from Olsen not being that good, but I think it's also just his personality lifts everybody in the Villa team, organises everybody in the Villa team. I'm a big fan of how close he pushes it to the line in penalty shootouts.
Yeah,
potentially, if Villa were to beat Sunderland in a penalty shootout in the cup next season, my opinion would change. But I broadly wanted Argentina to beat France in the World Cup final, and I broadly wanted Villa to beat whoever it was he beat in Europe, Lille. Yeah, Lille. I like the fact the way he tries to. Let's put it politely, the way he tries to impose his personality on games.
Yeah, George, you've picked him as well. Actually, if you look at kind of sweeper keeper metrics, he's top of all that stuff as well. And I think that's something that goes unnoticed, that under Emery, his distribution and the way he sweeps up, Villa obviously play a very high line as well. That's something that he's had to probably adapt his game to, but he's doing very, very well.
Yeah. I mean, you said, is he, when you justified your reason for not picking him, you said, is he the best keeper in the league? I think he might be. I think there's kind of an assumption maybe that Alisson and Edison are kind of better because the teams they play for, but I don't think you'd see a big drop-off if Martinez came in. I also think that measuring a keeper's ability by clean sheets is possibly the worst way of doing so, especially their performance over a season, because if you're going to keep a load of clean sheets, it's not going to be because of your keeper for the most part. It's going to be because of the defensive unit. And I think keepers like Martinez and Vicario, and to an extent Onana, who are kept way busier and therefore have way more to do and then perform well, is a better measure of their ability and their performance over a season than just the amount of goals they've conceded. It was a choice for me between Vicario and Martinez, and I think Vicario's, even though he was very good against Arsenal early this week, I have no idea what day it is anymore. He hasn't been as good since kind of February onwards, and I think as Jonathan said, when Olsen came in, you definitely noticed the lack of Martinez. And in terms of a player's impact on his team, I don't think Aston Villa would be in the Champions League side next season if they had Olsen in goal for the whole campaign. So I think he's the standout choice.
Jonathan, handshake emoji here, because you picked one that I'd like. I think I've picked one that you'll like potentially. I've gone for Jordan Pickford because I feel like they have kept a lot of clean sheets, and he's also relatively busy. So kind of in the middle of what you were saying, George.
Yeah, no, I think that's.
Anyone strongly disagree with that?
No, I think it's a perfectly reasonable shout. I guess there's that instinct not to pick players who finish in the bottom half of the table, but Everton's defensive record is 4th or 5th best this season. So to have a record that, I think you've got to give a lot of credit to Branthwaite and Tarkowski as well. But Pickford's had a very good season. And what an odd thing to say about Jordan Pickford. Maybe he's just not enough of an arse.
He's a bit mad, but I wouldn't say he's an arse.
Yeah.
But he's a bit
Sunderland boy.
He's from Washington.
Sorry.
So we're claiming when he wins England the Euros.
In America, Jonathan. Didn't know he's American.
So you know that Washington in the US is named after Washington in the Northeast?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't even know there's a place called Washington in the Northeast, to be honest.
Did you know, Dan, that New York is named after York?
No, it's not.
It is.
No, it's not.
Oh, yeah, it is, yeah.
It can't be. Why?
It is.
There's a place called Birmingham in America as well, isn't it? Birmingham, Alabama.
Well, I wonder where that's named after.
Yeah. Why are they naming it after all these random places in England?
Because there's people who left Britain, went to the US and were setting up kind of a new very. It's like New South Wales in Australia. It's named after South Wales.
It's making sense now, isn't it? I've wondered what all these places.
But no, the Washington family, as in George Washington, their ancestral land is Washington. The sort of it's a new town now, but it used to be a village just southwest of Sunderland. So that's why Sunderland wear red and white stripes, and why the US flag's red and white stripes, because it comes from Washington coat of arms.
Wow, you really do learn something every week.
In many ways, the US is a colony of Sunderland.
New York was called, initially the settlers in New York were Dutch, so it's called New Amsterdam, and the English settlers came in and overtook it and renamed it New York. Anyway,
I haven't got time for this. Let's stop exposing my thickness, and let's carry on with the teams of the season. George, I believe me and you have gone for the same right back. Jonathan, you've gone for Ben White.
Yes, I wanted to pick centre backs to full backs. I know White's played at right back for so long; he's barely a centre back anymore. But that has been a trend this season of playing centre backs as full backs. So I've done that on both sides. And White, I think he's sort of a good example of a modern fullback that, ultra modern fullback, that he's not massively attacking. Yeah, his job is mainly defensive, although he can get forward. He does contribute the odd goal, and he's a much better crosser than he used to be. I think his delivery's been very dangerous this season. So who have you gone for?
We've both gone for Porro.
Pedro Porro.
Who, according to WhoScored, has the higher rating. His goal the other day might have helped with that, though. I think it's difficult with Spurs, isn't it? Because it dropped off so badly over the last maybe 5 or 6, 7 games. So you get kind of a recency bias in your head. But I thought in the first half of the season in particular, he was absolutely brilliant and crucial to everything that was good about Tottenham. And when he didn't play, and same with the doggy, to be fair, as well, when they don't play at fullback, Spurs are infinitely worse. I think he's a really intelligent footballer, good technique, good pace, and he's just important to the way Postecoglou wants to build up. So that was why I picked him. I imagine you similar reasons, George.
Yeah, not much to add. I just think Spurs, even in this recent kind of malaise, have still been a very good attacking force. He's been a key part of that. I think he's frankly, I think the fullbacks in the Premier League this season have been poor, and so it's
it wasn't much
a bad bunch. No.
Yeah, it wasn't much hard, which is worth saying, by the way, as well. Pickford and Martinez had exactly the same rating, 6.71. So
still some way behind Andre Onana, presumably.
Oh, of course. He'll be in He'll be in the Who Scored 11 times up front in midfield, defence, and Arnold will be everywhere in the Who Scored 11. Centre back pairing, no surprise that we've all gone for the same, Saliba and Gabriel. I think it makes sense in the terms, isn't it? Arsenal have had the best defence, haven't they? You pick the two centre backs together. That makes sense. I imagine they'll get in the PFA team of the season as well. Saliba, though, and Sam always kicks off about this. Rating is only 6.85, whereas Gabriel's is 7.01, George.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. I'd love to look under the bonnet and understand why that is. I think it's pretty hard to split them. I think from a purely talent perspective, I think Saliba is the better player. Or just maybe the more polished, refined, classier model of the two. But they've been unbelievable. Arsenal defensively this season have been so good. The defensive unit has been so strong. To play the kind of possession-heavy, high-intensity game that they play and concede so few shots, so few big chances, is testament to the work that's done by particularly those two. When you consider that Ben White has obviously been, having had that brief dalliance back as centre-back early in the season, has been playing right-back all season, but constant churn between who's been playing left-back, between three players over the course of the campaign, and it hasn't derailed their defensive unit at all. So, they're unbelievable. I mean, I don't see any reason why they won't be the Arsenal centre-back pairing for the next 8-9 years, and that's pretty terrifying, I think, for other Premier League teams.
I always think like best centre-back pairings like Ferdinand and Vidic, Jonathan, like one's quite front-footed and then one's a bit more subdued and sits back and kind of sweeps up. And I always feel like Saliba and Gabriel. Gabriel's the front-footed one and Saliba kind of sits back and mops up and covers. But they've been a brilliant pairing. If Arsenal continue on the trajectory that they're on, they could go down as one of the best duos in Premier League history. Yeah,
I think it's probably the one area in the pitch where we still think in terms of the pairing. Yeah, it makes no sense to pull in, a player from Liverpool and a player from Villa or whatever, when you've got the pair together is what works. I think you see that at Tottenham with Romero and Van de Ven. I think they're a very good pairing that Romero's got the aggression and Van de Ven has the pace to cover behind him. I don't think the roles of Gabriel and Saliba are quite as clearly defined as that example of Ferdinand and Vidic, but they have complementary abilities and they're very good at covering for each other, and that's essential for centre backs. So I think it's very hard to mount a case for any other pairing this season.
Yeah, left back, we've all gone for different players. I just picked Ake because I think he's in Manchester City's best 11 now. I know he maybe hasn't played left back as much this season. When he does play there, he does really well, and wherever he plays in the back four, I think Ake has become quite subtly an important player for Manchester City. Jonathan, you've also picked a Manchester City player. I need to mention something to you here. We did The Guardian a month, maybe 6 weeks ago now. You said you didn't think Gvardiol had been a brilliant sign, hadn't been that good for Manchester City. Since then, he seems to have gone on the goal-scoring run of his life, and now even a bigger honour for him. Even if he wins the Premier League, he will get no bigger honour than being in Jonathan Wilson's 11 of the season. Yeah,
I mean, Guardiola said this as well, didn't he? He said that it'd take him a little bit of time to settle, but now he clearly has settled. I mean, he's had to learn a new position. We saw him at the World Cup being probably the best centre-back at the World Cup, and now he's playing at left back and he's become a goal-scoring left back. And since he got was the Forest goal, was that his first? No, it was his second one, maybe. But he got the goal against Real Madrid. Got 2 the other week in the same game. He just looks a really classy player, but he's also got the physical bulk that you get from a centre back. But he's doing it at fullback. So I think that new idea of rather than having your fullbacks bombing on, having slightly more defensive presences, being ready to counter the counter, to give you that physicality. I think he's sort of the model of a. If you're looking at what makes Guardiola's teams different now to how they were 15 years ago, Guardiola's a perfect example. I mean, I looked at the average height of the City starting 11 against Spurs on Tuesday and compared it to the Barcelona starting 11 against United in the Champions League final in 2011. It's only a 2-inch difference per man, but maybe that's maybe 2 inches is quite a lot.
Probably is in terms of averages, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you stood them all on each other's heads, I guess that's nearly 2 foot taller. Does that mean?
I know what you're getting at. What you're getting at, yeah.
So yes, he's big and good.
Yeah, I guess Pep's always been, well, not always, probably the last 5 years, always kind of gone against the grain with his left back. Obviously, we had Cancelo playing there for a long time, who you wouldn't have said was a natural left back, and then he's moved away from that and gone to playing centre backs at full backs. I mean, he's a trendsetter and he's a genius. George,
well,
you've gone for the.
I think that's an interesting thing on Guardiola, that you often see managers when they've been at the top of the game for a decade. A decade seems to be a rough sort of lifespan for a manager at the very, very, very highest level. You often see them sort of lapse into self-parody. I think you saw that happen with Wenger. You saw it happen with Clough. You see it's happening with Mourinho. They just become more cliched versions of themselves, as if when they're faced with a problem, rather than saying, what's the best solution to this problem, they say, what's the most characteristic solution to this problem? And Guardiola is not doing that at all. He keeps finding totally different, unexpected. After 15 years at the highest level, I know he's still relatively young. That that 15 years begins at the top when he was only 4 years out of being a player. But he's still coming up with very surprising, very different solutions, and I think that's as good an indicator of his longevity and his genius as anything.
That's a really, really good point. George, you've gone for the hipster choice of Mikalenko at left back. Fullback's was hard. I will.
Yeah, and like the fact, I mean, Vardiola's obviously been the best left back in the league from January onwards, but the fact that you both picked Man City players at left back kind of shows why I've left them out, because there's not enough minutes in the position. With Mikalenko, you got a guy who has been incredibly dependable and basically played every game and every minute for an Everton side whose defensive record has been really good. Like, do I think Mikalenko is as good as Vardiol? No.
That's not what the remit is. I think we can agree that
exactly
isn't what the remit is.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can agree on that.
So yeah, it's not a great heat, but he's the one I've come out with.
Yeah, and in midfield, we've all gone for Rodri and Rice. So that really no-brainers. Rodri hasn't lost a game of Premier League football all season. When he hasn't played, Manchester City have lost.
Who was the last team to play? Who's the last team to beat Rodri?
I feel like I heard this not that long ago, but it's disentered my brain.
Scotland.
That's ridiculous. I mean, he is a phenomenon in midfield. It's quite funny. You were just talking about like the setup of Barcelona compared to Manchester City, and it made me think, Busquets and Rodri quite similar in some ways. But I think now, George, we can probably say Rodri is the best defensive midfielder ever. Could we say that?
I genuinely think there's a fair argument that he's the best player in the world. Like he's never going to get that plaudit because it always goes to attacking players. But in terms of being the most effective, he's just unbelievable how good he is from a defensive standpoint, and his distribution and the goals that he scores when he does. Like he's just a complete footballer who plays in the middle of the pitch and elevates his team to a completely different level. He might not be able to do what Mbappe does. He might not be able to do what Bellingham does in the final third, but it's not his job to.
He does get in the final third. He's quite tidy in front of goal, in fairness.
Yeah. When he needs to be. Like, it feels like when City need a goal, he kind of cuts loose and does it. I absolutely love him. I think he's, even though he's starting to get the credit that he deserves, the fact that he was left off that 8-man shortlist for the Premier League Player of the Season awards is an absolute travesty. I think he should win basically all those awards, which is a bit of a spoiler for later. And anyone who doesn't have him in their team needs to watch more football.
Okay, and then Declan Rice, Jonathan, been brilliant this season, hasn't he? Really taken. Has he taken? Yeah, I'd say he probably has taken Arsenal to the next level because they've been a bit more consistent than they were that last season. I think he's just, whether he plays as a 6 or whether he plays as an 8 on the left, Declan Rice has just been brilliant every single week for Arsenal, and it has taken his game to a new level, which is probably what happens when you go into a more elite environment.
Yeah, and you can imagine him playing well alongside Rodri, that Rodri does the sitting job that, say, Jorginho does, and that gives Rice just a little bit of freedom to moderate his game according to the demands of the circumstances. That he can sit deep and you have a double pivot if you want, or you can bomb on and try and make late runs in the box and score goals. So, I think he's been hugely impressive. I think, unfortunately for England, he's going to have to just play as the 6. I think he's going to have to, which you don't get the full benefit of him, but Arsenal are getting the full benefit. And I suspect that one of the areas they'll be looking at strengthening over summer is getting in a younger version of Jorginho so they can release him more regularly.
Yeah, been been a great signing. Usually when someone's on for 100-odd million, they're probably questioned asked of them. But I don't think anyone is even bringing up Declan Rice's for at this point. And then you two have both gone for Martin Ødegaard. I've gone for John McGinn. So yeah, Ødegaard's not in my team. The reason I haven't put him in is because in the first half of the season,
it's because you're a Villa fan.
Well, there is that as well. But in the first half of the season, I don't remember thinking he was at his best level, Ødegaard. And I remember that being a discussion in various podcasts and stuff that Ødegaard wasn't at the level that he had been last season in the first half of the season.
Didn't we all have him in our mid-season teams? You haven't got those in front of you, I think.
No. We haven't got that level of preparation before the podcast, George. You know that.
He scored 2 goals in the first 4 games.
Okay, that's the first 4 games, but up until January, I bet his numbers weren't very good. Are his numbers this season the same as it's kind of similar to last season? First of all, he scored more goals last season.
Let me go to WhoScored.com. I can tell you.
Yeah, go there. That's the place to go. If you want to know stuff like that, that is definitely the place to go.
8 goals and 8 assists this season. And last season was 15 goals and 7 assists.
There we go. His levels have dropped.
It feels like him and Saka have kind of swapped penalty priorities.
He did take penalties last season.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, look, I can't argue with the pick because he's a brilliant footballer, and I actually think, Jonathan, if Kevin De Bruyne didn't play in the Premier League, we'd be talking about Ødegaard like, oh my God, is this amazing player of the kind of like that we've never seen before? But because we've seen De Bruyne do all this stuff for years and years and years, Ødegaard's like the heir to his throne. I think when De Bruyne passes on, I think Ødegaard will get the credit that he deserves.
Yeah, I think he gets plenty of credit now. But I take your point. I think it's he's a very modern player in that he's got all the technical attributes, the vision, the passing ability, the touch, but he's also actually quite physical. I mean, he's not a massive block of muscle, but he leads the press. He's good at winning the ball back. He's just one of those very complete modern players. You can see it in the academy. They've found somebody with incredible potential, and they've made sure it has no weaknesses. And the fact he's captain at what age is he? 24, but still relatively young. I think that's again for Arsenal looking forwards. I think that's a hugely positive thing. So I sort of feel that because of the position we're in with City, probably going to win a 4th in a row, probably going to win 6 in 7 years. You're constantly thinking, well, who can challenge them in the future? And then I always felt with Liverpool, it was, well, this is. How much better can Liverpool get? They feel like the season when they did push them close, or when they did win the league, it was this is Liverpool playing at their maximum, and they've had to play at their maximum to surpass City. I feel with Arsenal, because they've got players who could be there for a long time. So Rice, Ødegaard, Gabriel Saliba, there is a core that could keep improving. And when De Bruyne goes, Ødegaard probably is then the best player in that position in the league, and that's not something Arsenal have had for a long time.
No, and I think you're right. They've kind of built in quite a unique way, but it's going to pay dividends in the future. So I've better talk about John McGinn, I suppose, quickly. I've just picked John McGinn because Villa probably finished 4th, which maybe not a lot of people would have had them down. He's the captain. He's played nearly every game when he's not getting sent off unjustifiably against Tottenham Hotspur. He's played in multiple different positions across that midfield, and he's just been brilliant. When he plays well, Villa tend to play well and win, so that's why I put John McGinn in there, because I think across the whole season, he's been very, very consistent. And obviously, yes, it's a little bit of bias, but also I do watch him every week, so I know how good he is. So yeah, I've put him in my midfield. And then a bit boringly at the end, we've gone for the same front three of Palmer, Watkins and Foden. But I guess, is it boring, or does it show that we're all football connoisseurs? I'm not sure.
I think Saka, who is WhoScored.com's highest rated player this season, not being in the side is probably quite controversial. And I think in an ideal world, you would want to play a kind of 4-2-3-1. In my mind, it came down to Ødegaard or Saka, basically. Because you play 4-2-3-1 with Rodri and Rice, and then you play Palmer as number 10, and then Saka off the right. And I kind of came down by thinking that Ødegaard deserved to be in there just about over Saka. Palmer obviously has played his best football this season as through the middle rather than off the right-hand side, but he has played a fair bit of football off the right. I think it's pretty impossible not to put him in, given what he's done this season. I think Foden quite clearly is in there, and then Watkins versus Haaland is the choice up front. And I think we're probably all a bit immune to the talent of Erling Haaland now. So even though he probably deserves it on merit, you reward the person who's maybe surprised us a bit more in Ollie Watkins.
Yeah, Watkins' goal contributions, Jonathan, are the thing that stands out. Getting goals and assists, and his record there, having not taken penalties. I think Haaland hasn't been as good as he was last season, whereas Watkins, who ended the season
2 months out as well, didn't he? He was out,
exactly.
He was out from Christmas to beginning of March, so.
And he's still going to be top scorer.
He does help when you can score 4 goals in a game. It does, it does push you up ever so slightly. But Watkins has been incredibly consistent, incredibly durable through the whole season. Has got Villa punching above their weight, and maybe we could say he's playing to the maximum of his ability as well. Under Unai Emery, we didn't see these levels from him before, but him and Emery seem to be a match made in heaven. Yeah,
no, I think he's been exceptional. I didn't realise, I didn't think he could be quite this good. And he's in that golden spell that strikers occasionally get, where it feels like they can't miss. Every time they go through 1-on-1, you expect them to score. Every time the ball drops them, you expect them to score. And I think his shot conversion is ridiculously high, or certainly much higher than Haaland, I think Haaland it's in the bottom 10 in the Premier League this season.
Yeah,
which is another reason why I'm slightly. I mean, look, he's obviously a brilliant player, but. By his standards, I don't think he's had a great season.
No, and then Phil Foden, Jonathan on the left. I mean, Mark probably will win Player of the Year. I would have thought if Manchester City win the league, probably might win it anyway. But brilliant season from him. Not just in terms of you watch him; he's a beautiful footballer to watch. He's one of my favourite players to watch in world football, and has been for a long time. But his productivity this season as well, and it's kind of what I said about John McGinn. When Foden plays well, Manchester City player, which is what you used to say about De Bruyne, but it feels like Foden's slowly kind of taking over that mantle, and as De Bruyne kind of dwindles a little, he's still fantastic. Foden is becoming the guy.
Yeah, and I think one of the really impressive things about Foden is he's done it playing in 2 different positions. He's done it off the left, and he's done it in that De Bruyne role as well. And I presume long term, City see Foden replacing De Bruyne and Doku replacing Foden on the left. So. To be that good in 2 different positions, albeit in a great side, I think that suggests his tactical intelligence. But yeah, there's not just sort of nice touches. There's product there as well, setting up goals, scoring goals, and yeah, he's as you say, he's sort of supplanting De Bruyne as the sort of creative leader of that side.
Okay, that's our teams of the season. So yeah, we'll get them flashed up on the screen. Do we need to run through them? I'll run through mine quickly. Pickford, Porro, Saliba, Gabriel, Ake, Rodri, Rice, McGinn, Palmer, Watkins, Foden. Jonathan, apparently it's Jonathan and Sam's team, but I'm not sure if that's true. But anyway,
yeah, it's completely true. Sam picked 9 of them, 10 of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I just picked Guardiola.
Okay, so it's Martinez, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Guardiola, Rodri, Erdegaard, Rice, Palmer, Watkins, and Foden. And then George's team is Martinez, Porro, Saliba, Gabriel, Mikalenko, Rodri, Erdegaard, Rice, Palmer, Watkins, Foden. So I imagine this will be put up on Who Scored socials, and there'll be a poll to decide whose team is best. And I imagine there'll be an algorithm 11 as well, of course, featuring Andre Onana in goal. So hopefully that doesn't win, because otherwise we'll all look very, very silly. Let's rattle through then the end of season awards. So your player of the season, Jonathan?
Rodri. For all the reasons we said earlier, yeah.
Yeah, Rodri.
Okay, I've gone for Declan Rice, just for the reasons I said earlier. I guess young player of the season, is it a Cole Palmer clean sweep?
Yep.
Yeah, it has to be, really, doesn't it? It's difficult. I will say I wanted to put Anthony Gordon in my 11, and I just couldn't get him in, and he'd probably be my second choice for that award, because I think he's had a brilliant season. And he
it's a problem, isn't it, with the sort of the PFA young player of the year, that Haaland and Foden about there just needs to be a regulation. It's got to be players 23 and under at the start of the season who have not had a season in which they've already played 20 Premier League games, or 15 Premier League games.
Or they've got under 30 games before the season starts, or something like that. So it's an emerging talent rather than an established player.
Haaland's been playing for about 5-6 years. I don't know if Foden's been playing for a long time. Was Foden in there as well?
Yeah.
He's been playing for bloody years as well, hasn't he? So it doesn't make sense, that award at all. Signing of the season, George.
I look at this differently. Like I think Declan Rice has been a great signing for a lot of money. I think Alexis McAllister has been a great signing for a lot of money, but I don't know many people doubted it was going to happen. My signing of the season is Ross Barkley at Luton, who I think it's basically, I think signing the season should be one where when a team makes it, everyone goes, ugh, that's not good. And then it turns out to be good, because that means that the recruitment team have done their job. They have sourced the talent for absolutely no money, a player that people thought was gone, who turned out to be their best player over the season, and even had some people at times calling for him to return to England. So an inspired bit of business. And it'll be interesting to see what happens to him, because I can't imagine he'll want to play in the Championship next season. I think he'll be a pretty smart pickup for a Premier League side.
I'll tell you what's going to happen to him. This is my prediction. He's going to be available for cheap or on a free. Is he out of contract, Barkley?
Was it a 1-year deal?
I don't know. I don't think it was a long contract. Everton aren't going to have a lot of money. I reckon he'll go back to Everton.
No. Yeah, I agree.
That's my prediction. Jonathan, your signing of the season?
Well, on a similar logic, Adam Wharton at Crystal Palace.
January signing, that is niche, Jonathan.
Love it.
Yeah, but he's been one of the best central midfielders.
He's been brilliant
in the second half of the season.
In the world.
Since Glasner came in, he's been absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, rather than just picking somebody who we've already mentioned, or somebody who went for 100 million, or just copying and picking Ross Barkley, Adam Wharton.
I went for Cole Palmer. It actually fits into some of the stuff that George said, because I think eyebrows were raised when he was signed. 40 million now looks really, really cheap, but at the time people were like, well, City are letting him go for 40 million. He can't have anything, but he's gone to Chelsea and been their best player. And bizarrely, he's probably going to be part of a team that finishes in the top 6, which we wouldn't have been saying a few weeks ago as well. So he's looking at his numbers. I know he takes penalties, but I think I would class that as a first full season. I think he's been a brilliant signing. Manager of the season, then. I mean, there's no prize for guessing who mine's going to be, so I'll move on from me. George?
Yeah, same. I think it has to be Emery. An unbelievable job. And I think Villa to finish 4th, even to optimistic Villa fans at the beginning of the season, didn't really feel likely. Yeah.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I can't say anything against that. If Arsenal win the league, it's hard then to look beyond Arteta. I think you can make cases lower down the league for Iraola, Gary O'Neill, if he wasn't such an annoying presence about refereeing decisions that are clearly right. But yeah, I'm not going to dispute Emery.
Moisey, top 10 finish.
I think if Luton aside, Rob Edwards would have stood a decent chance of.
Yeah, although, but with the greatest respect, they're not anywhere near staying up.
No.
You're saying if they got sort of 30% more points than they've got. Yeah,
and also, if you take out the points deductions, they're miles off it.
For all that sort of Luton have been quite enjoyable to watch, and I imagine their fans have had quite a lot of fun this season. And for all that Burnley have shown little flickers of form over the last sort of 6 weeks or so, the bottom 3 are going to be 3 of the worst 20 Premier League seasons ever in terms of points won.
Yes.
So, it's none have been anywhere near, which is a worry for the league. And I know that last season all 3 promoted sides stayed up, and so maybe this is just a redressing of the balance. That 1.5 a season going down sort of feels about right. But if you look at the combined points total, it's tiny. I think it's only the average point. Hang on, I've wrote this down. These are proper notes. Look at that. Look at that. Notes.
That is unbelievable. That is peaking.
So yeah, their average points is 22. The previous lowest was 28.3 for Sunderland, Birmingham, and Derby in 2007-8. And there's only been one other under 32. So this has been a historically terrible season for promoted sides.
If I hadn't bought it, Rob Edwards, you wouldn't have got those statistics out there.
That's true. I mean, I didn't do this research for this podcast, just to be clear.
Yeah, don't do any for this. Don't do any for this show. This is for all.
No, this is for this podcast.
This is for all the stuff Jonathan does in the week on other shows. Okay, then, so that does us team of the season and all the awards handed out, and I'm sure all this stuff will get clipped up and put on socials as well. So that's the end of our end of season review. We're going to have a final day preview as well. I'm not sure when this is coming out. So I'm not sure whether that's relevant information because the final day may have gone by the time I'm saying this on this video. So yeah, probably don't worry about me saying that at all. But thank you ever so much for tuning in, and tell all your friends and your family about the show.